All right, I got to read fast. I've only got 15 minutes to get in sleep. Oh, I messed around too much on the other stuff. And I had a whole bunch more stuff queued up. I'll just peck away at it tomorrow. I wish I would have watched the time better. October 12th, Secrets, Part 1. That means there's probably a Part 2, possibly. Who knows? Oh, boy, I'll tell you. I wish I had a hard copy of this where I could sit down and mark each chapter. Okay, ease up into another inch or so. There, that's it. Now just hold it while I get these screws in. John began powering in the screws with the cordless drill. Below, Anne and Lisa held the sliding glass door frame in place until he could get enough fasteners in to hold it in place. Anne scrutinized the greenhouse roof, now 2/3 complete. Do you think it will leak? These doors don't look at all that tight. John drove another screw and then decided the battery pack needed replacing. Lisa, would you go into the workshop and get the other battery pack out of the charger? It's on the workbench to the right when you go in the door. He climbed off the ladder, handed Lisa the spent battery, and she headed to the workshop. Well, it might. We've got a pretty good slope, but we'll know the first time it rains. We'll need to spend some time sealing air leaks, too. We considered just using the doors themselves, but by installing the frames, also, we'd be able to slide 4 of the doors on each side open for ventilation. Hopefully it won't leak too much, but if it does, we'll have to seal it all up and find some other way to ventilate. His wife studied the structure they'd all been working on for the last 3 days. I suppose this has used up most of our lumber, didn't it? John sighed. Yes, it did, close to all of it, but the value of the greenhouse is such that it was worth the trade. I'm sorry, I know you were really counting on that new addition. Good thing for us that we've been steadily accumulating the lumber to build it, or we'd be out of luck trying to build this. If things settle down, there's about a dozen mature pines on the back of the property that can be felled and milled into lumber, where I'd like to open up the pasture a bit more. A year to season the wood and we'll build on the new kitchen. Anne wasn't particularly happy, but she bowed to the necessity of it. Maybe if we can start selling farm goods next year, we'll make enough to pay for the materials we have to buy. We keep hearing about how the country is picking itself up from the fall. Do you think the university will be calling you back to work anytime soon? With a troubled look and a shrug, her husband replied, I don't know. Lately, I'm wondering if they'll ever have a need of a grant writing office again. A good deal of the grants the university received came from the federal government. Much of the rest came from various foundations and institutions that derived their money from trusts and other such instruments driven by the stock market, bonds, and whatnot. When the asteroid hit, it blew the bottom out of the global financial markets and the federal government both. The university will go on somehow, but whether it will ever need a grant writing office or whether there'll be major grants to apply for again, I don't know. We may be witnessing a major paradigm shift in the way things are done in this country. I'm not going to sit by the phone hoping they'll call. He slipped his arm around his wife's waist and looked out across the small fields and pastures that comprised the Horn homestead, seeing it not as it presently was, but the way it would be when they had willed it into being. If Dad and I can make a go out of farming, we're going to try. Sooner or later, American agriculture will shake out again like it did before, and small-scale farming such as we can do won't be profitable anymore. But until then, we should be able to do okay. At least for the next 10 to 20 years, I'm willing to bet there's going to be a big emphasis in the eastern states on home gardening and local produce, local food production. Over the last months, there's been a lot of folks who have known real hunger for the first time in their lives, and if rationing proves to be necessary for a while longer, it will serve to keep that lesson fresh in their minds. In time, they'll forget how fragile the web is that brings them food, fuel, and the other necessities of life from faraway places. But until then, I think there'll be a lot of folks who will place great value in having as many of those necessities produced close to hand as possible. A family willing to work ought to be able to make an agricultural living from that, at least until I'm too old to work anymore, and by then Mel should be college age and heading out on her own. We can retire then, at least from farming. Don't reckon we'll ever quit gardening and keeping at least a little stock. Heather walked out the back door to the bell post and gave the 2 double rings that meant come to the table. Lisa was just returning from the workshop with the fresh battery for the drill, so she handed it to John, who put it on the drill, and they all went inside. Robert came in out of the garden carrying a basket of ripe tomatoes and squash. Everyone admired the produce, which prompted the man to say, "Those row covers have really worked well. The leaves have been losing their scalded look since we put them on. You reckon it's because they block out the UV?" John shrugged. Could be. Ann noticed last night that I'm darker in skin tone, and I think you are too. To be expected since you and I spend so much time in the sun. The kids look darker as well. Maybe the plastic is filtering out some of the UV. Lisa frowned and turned to John. Take off your shirt. I want to see this change. He did as she requested and removed his shirt. She compared his untanned areas to his arms and the back of his neck, then called Heather over and looked her over. We haven't been taking this seriously enough. Both of you have got a dark tan. That's not good, especially for you, John. I think we're all going to start needing to wear long sleeves and wide-brimmed hats in the sun until the ozone layer rebuilds itself. It's getting pretty late in the year, so the sun will be lower on the southern horizon. Maybe the UV problem won't get any worse before the equinox begins to lengthen the days again. Anyone have any idea how long it'll take the ozone layer to reform? We could have a real problem by next summer. No one spoke at first, then John said, well, the theoretical studies predicted that a big impact would temporarily wipe out the ozone layer, letting more UV radiation hit the ground, but they really didn't say for how long it would last, beyond stating that it wasn't expected to last more than a year or two. Those were for big impacts a kilometer in size or larger. The asteroid that hit us was smaller than that, so maybe the length of time the ozone layer will be disrupted will be correspondingly less. Reckon we should ask Luke. If he doesn't know, then he'll probably know somebody at the university who might. It's got to be something that's being studied. Brittany opened the over door and took out a oven door. It says over. Look at it right there. The oven door, and took out a pan of cornbread, then set it on a trivet on the counter to cool. The family sat to the table. John said grace, and they began to eat their salads. I was afraid we were going to have to subsist on preserved foods through the winter, Lisa said glowingly. But with the row covers and the greenhouse, we'll be able to have fresh food whenever we like. I've paid $2 a pound for winter tomatoes, but that weren't half this good before the impact. Now that we're eating this buttercunch lettuce, I'll never buy iceberg lettuce again. When we move back, I'm going to have Luke dig up a garden spot in the backyard and put in a small greenhouse. Anne asked, are you and Luke thinking of moving back into town then? Lisa looked a little troubled at this. Well, I think maybe we'd better discuss it. From the news, it sounds like the government is beginning to get things back under control, at least in Gainesville. The crime rate is falling. Food is starting to come in again. Fuel will be rationed for a while, but it is coming. I'd like Heather to be able to go back to her regular school, and I certainly won't miss that morning and evening bike ride to the clinic at Archer every day, come heat, cold, and rain, though I'm probably in better physical shape now than I've been since before Heather was born. The only problem is that Luke says our house has been all but gutted by thieves since we came here. It's going to take time and materials which may prove hard to come by to make it livable again. If you'll have us for at least a little longer, we'd like to stay. Anne smiled at her and said, of course you're welcome. You've been a valuable asset, and we've been happy to have you and Heather. Her guest smiled. I'm glad, but lately I've been feeling guilty that we haven't been contributing enough for our keep. We've made a major impact in your food supply and have contributed little towards that other than labor. We do have medical skills, but it's not like you all have needed a lot of that. It may be inflating away by the day, but Luke and I would like to at least contribute cash towards keeping the Horn homestead afloat, since we have little else that we can give. We're both working and we're both being paid. This will keep you all from having to subsist on just Dan's salary. John spoke up. Well, I won't try to fool you that it hasn't been something that was on my mind. The country has been knocked solidly on its behind, but it is starting to try to function again, which means that the economy is going to have to start working again to do it. We can get by for a while longer on just what we already have here, what we can produce for ourselves or trade with others nearby, but that won't work forever. It's going to take time and some outside resources to get the farm up and running as a profitable operation, and your assistance can help close the gap. Whatever y'all feel that you can contribute will certainly help. Lisa smiled and said, good, I'll talk over with Luke tonight when he calls.